Peter, Katerina, thanks for joining me to talk about our FTS Expressions piece, which we're going to look at what makes a good expert and just have a chat about that. I thought it would be quite useful initially, if you don't mind introducing yourself and letting us know how long you've been doing expert work and the type of work that you've been doing. Peter.
Hi, thank you, Gerry. My name is Peter Caillard. I've been undertaking expert work for about the last 6 years. My background is in transportation planning and highways design and construction. And since I've been doing expert work, I've probably worked on about 40 cases, of which I've got to a point of testifying on 7 occasions. And I currently head the buildings and infrastructure team within FTS.
Great. Katerina?
Hello, I'm Katerina Hoey. I'm a technical director here at HKA, and I've been doing expert work for approximately 8 years now. I'm an architect. I've been working in the UK and the Middle East prior to doing this expert work, and I think I've been instructed approximately 60 plus times during this period.
And my name is Gerry Brannigan. I'm a partner and head of Forensic Technical Services Group in HKA. I'm a building services engineering expert and MEP. I also do a bit of multidisciplinary design management. I've been working in this industry since 2012, and I've probably delivered over 50 reports, and I've testified about 6 times in different jurisdictions around the world, which has been pretty interesting. So, one of the questions that's often asked is what makes experts different? So what is the different approach that experts take, which is different from the normal design, construction and consultancy practice that many of us have come from?
I guess one of the key things is that the expert is impartial. Therefore, whereas with construction and consultancy in the conventional forms, the designer will be working to a particular employer and is loyal directly to that employer, in expert work there's the need to be impartial. The expert is writing his report for the court or for the arbitration hearing, and his loyalty and his first responsibility is to that hearing. Therefore, everything that he produces must be his impartial opinion first and foremost.
Peter's absolutely right. The main difference for me is the question of impartiality. But it's quite interesting because as an architect and contract administrator, I find that quite a lot of us already have that fundamental tension when we are acting as contract administrators, because we need to be impartial in administering the contract. So it's quite an interesting way of leading into expert work is understanding your duty as a contract administrator.
I agree with that, but I also think in terms of the approach of an expert witness as opposed to a consultant, it's a different way of approaching a problem or a job. Not just about loyalties, but actually it's looking at every possible scenario to understand what has happened there. So I found it very difficult when I first started doing this kind of work that you weren't trying to find a solution to a problem, you were trying to analyse what that problem was and describe why that problem happened, rather than trying to just fix it. And that was quite difficult as a designer who had been designing for many years and fixing problems, whereas now you were analysing that problem. And I think that mindset shift of what you're actually trying to achieve is important to understand as doing this kind of investigatory work. And also making sure that what you're providing is able to be explained to people who know nothing about the subject. So speaking in lay terms and being able to take the most complex problem down to the simplest language is I think a really key difference to the approach quite often.
It's sometimes said that you should try to write your reports as if you were writing them for an intelligent 10-year-old. And on that basis, you're thinking about somebody who is intelligent enough to understand the subject, even though it might not be a subject in which they have any particular technical background.
And Gerry, you're right, communication is key. And in order to be able to communicate your findings, it's necessary to go into often a very forensic level of detail that we wouldn't necessarily have had to look at in our practice.
And sometimes too, I think it's important to remember that it can be the case that bad news is actually good news for your client. I think sometimes people think that they want to support their client and help their case. Sometimes the best way to help that case is actually to demonstrate that it's not a particularly good case. It's better perhaps that the client finds out early on that the case that he thought was strong is perhaps not so strong, and then makes decisions based on that, and maybe saves money by having that good information, albeit not what he was wanting as an opinion, but he gets that openly and honestly early on.
And just swinging back round to impartiality, quite a useful exercise that I have found is that in examining an issue is, would I be giving the same advice if I was advising the other party in the dispute? Because really, to be able to be truly impartial, the advice should be primarily the same.
The answer should be yes on every occasion.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
So with this different approach that we've talked about, expert work might not actually be for everybody. So how can someone decide whether they're going to be good at doing expert work, and how can what qualities are important for that person to understand when they transition into expert work that it is going to be for them?
Gerry, for me, I think a lot of it boils down to attention to detail and being prepared to forensically examine the issues in a case, in dispute, and being able to listen and understand your instructions, because they're often very specific. And then obviously communication of your findings after that is key, whether it's within meetings with your legal team and your client, joint expert meetings, and going all the way through to cross-examination in court via your report. So communication of your findings is absolutely essential.
Yeah. I think there are three key qualities that an expert needs. Firstly, they need to be on top of their game technically. They need the experience in their subject in order to be considered as an expert in it. Secondly, they need to be able to write expert reports, which is different to technical reports. It's a different style of report to a different audience. And thirdly, they need to be able to perform in court. They need to have a certain level of competence and gravitas and professionalism that they can actually aid that court and support that court, and come across as the advisor to that court who will be trusted and help in that sense.
And do you think that's the kind of thing that puts a lot of people off, worrying about that court process?
I suspect a lot do, because most will have spent 20 or 30 years in consultancy or in construction or in their particular field. They've never really dealt with this before, and it can come across as quite daunting. But I think, like most skills, it's something that you learn. You learn how to do it, you do it once, you do it a couple of times, you get experienced, and then it becomes a lot easier to do.
And there is specific training for going in before one goes into court, so I think that's worth bearing in mind, as well as I believe something like 90% of disputes settle prior to court. So the majority of the work that we do ends up being resolved through negotiation or mediation.
That's obvious just from our introductions at the beginning. We've all done 50, 40, 50, 60 cases, but actually each of us have only given evidence half a dozen times or so. That's you can see that is the case. Most things do settle.
And in many ways, that's an indication that we have done a good job. Because the more that the parties understand their case and come to an agreement, the more likely the case won't go the full distance. We've done our job well, and our clients have saved money.
Yeah. Right, so from what you've said, expert witnesses seems to be a one-man or woman job where they are the only people involved. Do you find experts can work well in teams, or is it a lonely existence that it sounds like?
I find very often nowadays we work on large projects which are often multidisciplinary, with experts from a very wide range of specialisms. We have one particular project at the moment where we have 14 individuals working on it, both internal and consulting experts. We also work very closely with our colleagues in quantum and delay, and also forensic accounting now as well, damages and other specialisms. So no expert is working alone. We are very much a big team.
We also have expert support that we work with who are absolutely invaluable in helping us keeping everything running smoothly. So it's not just the big multidisciplinary projects in which we work as a team. We can work as a smaller team within our own individual disciplines. That's quite common in architecture, for instance.
And expert support are an important link between the internal staff at HKA and the consulting experts. They get involved in setting up the projects, they help manage the consultants, and they work very closely with the clients. So again, they are all part of this team within the company.
So the team approach that we've been talking about, how does that help our experts and our consulting experts be better experts? Does it? Or is it just a way of being cost effective for the clients?
Well, Gerry, in working with teams, I find that as experts, we are all bringing something different to the table, even if we're working within the same discipline. So working as a team, we all are able to continue learning from each other. And it's not a one-way street. It's not just the juniors who may be learning from the named experts, but in fact, the older named experts probably have quite a lot to learn from the juniors who are coming up through the ranks. They've got a different range of experience. So I think it is a benefit to us as experts, developing experts, and to the client.
Definitely.
I would agree with that entirely. We all have different experiences and different skills, and as a team we can pull them and learn off each other, and that's very much what we encourage here at HKA.
It's an argument we hear a lot, that the experts should do everything. Do you think that we are able to provide a more rounded service by having that team approach?
I think working with a team of assistants and junior experts provides an excellent service for our clients. It also allows us to be more agile. We can respond more quickly because the named experts, if we did all the work all the time, we would never have any availability capacity. So it does allow us to be more responsive, as well as training up the experts of the future.
So clients, when they're appointing us, want to have the best expert in that field every single time. So how can experts strive to become that best expert, and how can they be supported, and what can they do you think, to be the best expert in their field?
One of the great benefits of HKA is our global reach. We operate all over the world. We're the biggest company in the world in what we do, and that means the range and the variety of the inquiries that we are getting is immense. And therefore, for anyone who's looking to broaden their experience, the opportunities are enormous through us.
And do you think that the different types of experience in the same field, different types of disputes, help you become a better expert witness?
Absolutely. I think you need to be able to apply your powers of analysis to all sorts of issues within your field of expertise. So working on a variety of instructions, maybe one will be to do with water ingress, another will be to do with the performance of a construction professional. They all are testing your ability to get to the facts and analyse them effectively and produce a useful, impartial opinion to assist your client in the court.
And I think that's very important when, say, you might be cross-examined about your suitability for a job. You don't just have to say, oh, yes, I'm an expert in this particular narrow field that I'm testifying on. Actually, I've designed roads all over the world. I've worked on other transportation projects, and it's this wide breadth of experience that I'm bringing to this particular case to help give an opinion to help the court. And courts like to see that the expert, in fact, is not just someone from a narrow field, but very broad, very experienced.
So with experts working, becoming a named expert and doing expert work for a period of time, does it make you a worse engineer or architect? Because you're not in normal design anymore?
I think arguably you have access to a much greater number and range of projects than you would do had you remained in practice, to be honest. So I don't agree that not being in practice anymore will affect your ability to act as an expert.
I agree. I think I've probably learned as much about my technical subject in the last 5 or 6 years as a full-time expert than perhaps in the 30 years up to that, because you deal with so many disparate matters. And some matters you know instantly what you're going to say, others you have to research, do a little bit of find a bit more about it, develop that knowledge a little bit further. You read the other side's report, get their opinion. So your knowledge is developing all the time, and it's developing very quickly. So I don't go along with that argument that the full-time expert is losing skills. Far from it, they are developing and improving all the time.
Yeah. One experienced expert once told me that most people learn from the mistakes. Experts learn from other people's mistakes a lot more often. So
it's very true.
There's a lot of information that you discover and you find and you can investigate, which really adds to your knowledge. So I completely agree that, and I think most people I brought in, and I agree with this myself, is that I'm a far better engineer now than I ever was as a design engineer, which is a bit scary when I think about the kind of projects that I was involved in.